Yeah, Virgil.
Ladies and gentlemen, monsters, Brad Venable.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to pull up this slide and we will get into it. Meow. So, today we're talking about finding your inner monster. We've got Brad here and we're going to ask him some questions about some of his experiences in the booth, how he's created creature voices, and then at the end we're going to give you guys an opportunity to apply some tips and tricks that we're going to share with you and win some spooky prizes. Ooh. Oh yeah. Oh, I think
Talk louder. There we go.
I guess I want to start off with, first off, are we alone?
Which one? Hell with it.
Okay. Our friend Brad here. Did anyone here see Venom? Okay, cool. Brad was the noises of the creature Venom. That was not all Tom Hardy. I think he did it once, probably. No, not even once.
I'm saying nothing negative about him. He is absolutely my favorite actor on the planet. But his people were very protective of him, as they should. It's good for them for doing so. So you won't see my name attached to it in any way. I'm not even given an additional voices credit. But you might find this familiar.
We are Venom.
Come on. That was me. And all the trailers that lead up to the movie.
that's amazing. That is so.
Now, the audition that went out for that was really, it was like matching noises, right?
Yes, it was.
Did you just purely match the noise, or did you ad-lib any of it?
What I did is typically they always say the old hard and fast rule when you're doing an audition is do one like they asked and then do one for you. You know, and whatever's the stronger take, put first, that kind of thing. So what I did instead, I did exactly what they wanted. And to be perfectly honest, it was a whole lot of snarly, liquidy,
It was wet.
gross, I hesitate to say it, moist. And it was pig-like. It was because there were 3 scenes that they gave in that audition. One was just there was fighting noises, which that was you're not going to get very much, you know, something to really use in that. So you know, that kind of stuff. It's generic, really. I mean, you're not going to do anything really special when it comes to that kind of stuff. But outside of the fighting thing, there was the scene. If you've seen the movie, spoilers, then you know that Tom's character, Eddie Brock, goes into an MRI, and the MRI machine actually causes the alien symbiote pain. And so there was a whole lot, you know, it's that kind of weird, like, pig and, you know, being stuck pig noise. That was one of them. And then the other one was something like just a lot of snarling, and then you could hear Tom at the very end. That's the one you're gonna get. It was like that's how the clip to match was. So it was matching at first, and then there was just some kind of like, you know, concatenation weirdness there.
I thought that was, whenever, I thought that was him saying, that's the one you get. Here's me doing the noise.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because he's not gonna stress his voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. That was how we did it. It was a lot of fun, and it turned into. It's funny because if you go into a sound stage, ADR stage, where you would do it, you go in and they give you a shot list, like how many different scenes you're in, and there were only 4 pages, but on the side it gives you the time code of how long in the movie you're going to do it. One of them was a minute and 17 seconds. That was one of the fighting scenes which was crazy. So it's like, here's my 4 scenes in the movie, which was, you know, introduction, pain in the MRI, that was the chase scene, the introduction. The pain in the MRI, the silent, you know, take out all the cops scene, and then the big battle at the end. That's it. 4 pieces of paper, right? It was so much longer than that. It was so long. I mean, it was a lot of work. They had me for a day, which is like you can have up to 8 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
And thank God it was only 3.5, because we did good. And I was really, we were real pleased with how it turned out. But it was a long day.
Were you matching the picture with those?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
So it's just like anime, except live action.
Can we also just address real fast? So when Brad refers to the fighting sounds, in voiceover, those get called efforts. And efforts are something that celebrities tend to not like to do, which creates a whole lot of opportunity for actors such as ourselves who are sounded like actors to come in and be basically, how did you phrase it, like the stunt voice, right?
Basically,
Yeah.
that's the way I've always talked about my work on Venom is as I was Tom Hardy's stunt voice.
Or grunt double.
That's hilarious.
I think of stealing that.
Christmas past, but can I have that as a
Yeah.
Grunt.
Everyone can take it. Be like grunt double. I did the efforts for Vin Diesel and Fate of the Furious. So
I didn't know that.
you didn't?
I actually didn't, no.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, it's like during all the fight scenes or like any of the impact noises, and they have you in there for. And the reason, even if they want to do that, the reason is they, per a SAG contract on a film, whether you get paid $20 million or $10,000 for the film, in it, every standard SAG contract, they have you for 1 day of ADR with the star. So obviously, with that, they want to get the lines down. They would rather have the actor doing all the lines. Occasionally, though, we do pick those up as well. But the thing is, if you had to pay to get Vin Diesel back in the booth, you're looking at maybe $100,000 for a day, and then
More like 5 minutes. Procedures work well for that.
Yeah, you can get us on scale for 1,000. So.
And that's something to consider is, if you're a voice actor and something that you're interested in doing, voice match work is, I think, really, along with anime, some of the toughest work you can do because you're not just approximating timing if you're matching the picture. If you're doing more than efforts or actually doing lines or performance, you're having to mimic the choices of another actor and you're not in their head. So, and to kind of bring back to the monster thing, I have been very lucky to be the sound alike for Adam Sandler for the Hotel Transylvania series. So I don't say blah, 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 unless I do say blah, blah, blah. So I had gotten the opportunity to work with Gendy and work with the team over at Sony doing games and a lot of time products and things like that. And it was amazing because it's such a fun character. But that character is a monster, but also involves the comedic timing of Adam Sandler and his timing and getting that down to the performance, I think is what really, at the end of the day, what really makes these characters work is infusing the choices of the original actors with the spirit of the character. So let's get into talking a little bit about how we might approach a character outside of voice matching. When you get an audition for something, specifically a creature character, let's talk about what that looks like. We can talk about some of the work that we've all done, you've heard us in, and Brad, I'm sure we could add tons to this list. I mean, Dragon Ball.
Yes.
Who were you in Dragon Ball Super?
I wish you saw me.
I love that.
While I piloted the ship, my lord.
Yeah, see, it's so great. I'm such a Dragon Ball nerd. And then between Chris and I, we've done everything from God of War to World War Z, Ace Combat, a bunch of, you were in Ace Combat too, weren't you? And so lots of creature work, a lot of stuff where we get handed pictures of characters and they say, hey, it's a dark elf king and here's a language sample and can you mimic this and perform in this and create this? Or in the case of like Pickle and Peanut, they asked Chris to do something that was very similar to kind of like Falcor.
The audition was just do Falcor, but they wanted a crappy version of Falcor.
Yeah.
So they were like, you did such a great crappy impression of Falcor, and that's how I got that job. So I was like, yeah, I thought I would add some camp to it. In actuality, I'm like watching clips, I'm like, I think I sound just like Falcor in this.
Yeah, right. In our line of work, you start a lot of times with not a whole lot of information. You'll get a script, and I was lucky enough to work with Disney on a show called Milo Murphy's Law, which the team that created Phineas and Ferb, that was their sequel show, which was more of a sci-fi kind of crazy show with like Christian Slater and Weird Al Yankovic and Mark Hamill. You know, these guys just starting out, so it's really sweet. But the script, I got brought in as the utility voice along with D. Bradley Baker to do the creatures. And it was amazing because I would actually go in and hear what Dee had done and have to go in and do something different because they didn't want the creatures to be uniform. So in the case of Milo, there was a huge arc in season 1 where these monsters called the Pistachions. And all they said were they're plant monsters. And we had no pictures, and we had to just create individual, and every pistachion had a name and a number. So each had an individual, it was like trial by fire, it was really fun. So what we want to teach you is how we approach creature voice acting. So when you see a picture of a monster, what are some things that you do? So if you have an audition, or you even wanted to start playing with the sounds yourself and build a toolkit, well, where does it start? Luckily, we have an acronym. You can remember this very easily. If you remember that old song, "There was a mash, there was a monster mash." So we start with the 4 steps here, and there are mouth, attitude, size, and how scary. So basically it goes like this. When we're looking at a monster, like Cloverfield, Clover, you've got M for the mouth. You've got your attitude, you're gonna try to figure out from the picture or the script, is this character, what is happening, what's the intention, what is happening in the scene? You know, like a lot of times in movies, you've got the character that discovers the baby bear, and then behind it, the big mama bear comes up, right? So the attitude would be protecting, angry, versus the baby bear's attitude, which would be scared, adorable, helpless maybe. The other thing to consider is size. When you're approaching monsters, size doesn't always mean scary. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's a great example. It's a big scary monster that isn't really scary in its appearance, but does make some sort of crazy sort of creature sounds and obviously blows out.
Oh, we have a question.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the mouth and anything that is around the face.
This whole area.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Mask.
Yeah, the mask. That's a good one. We're gonna get into discussing that because it's the other thing is when you look at the mouth. My favorite example is what if it's a blob monster, which I've had to do for Disney, that doesn't have a mouth. What does your blob monster sound like? You know, aside from things like that. Tusks, anything like a butterfly proboscis.
Yeah, and because I worked on 11/11 with you.
That's right.
Yeah, and I was doing Laszlo, and a lot of times it would be like, you know, how monster do you want it? It's like, what a lot of teeth with it. So you have to embody that, like just getting up there and keeping all like your jaw forward. Also, another thing is with creatures, if you, a lot of times if it's like monsters or concept art, the face is not going to be symmetrical.
Yes.
Sometimes. So maybe talking out one side of the voice, and also if it has like a hole in its throat.
It's like, how do you do a voice of a skeleton? You know, there's invariably like every fantasy, tropey, you know, RPG, action, whatever. How do you do sounds when there are no vocal cords, there are no musculature things to consider? So, you know, those end up being like mostly hisses and breathless sounds.
Right.
Interesting, you know, it's just the way that you have to consider, you start with the instrument that character, that creature has, and move forward. It's like sometimes it's the hardest thing is to get past that very first part.
Absolutely. And, you know, every time you see a snake monster, someone that has a snake-like alien, what's the first thing an actor does? And extend the S's. You take the script, and it may not be written this
You know what
way.
that does? It extends my snoring. And casting directors immediately would go, next.
Yeah. So it's a great opportunity to get creative with it and start with the basics, and then we get into the fun part, which is how do we make this character unlike the 400 other people that are auditioning for it. So just remember these 4 things. Look at the mouth of the mask, the attitude of the character. You're going to have a picture and a scene. The size, how big is it? How much space does it have to fill? Is it a character that's towering over the prey and you have to project downwards? And how scary? If this is a show for Disney Junior and it's a dinosaur, it's going to be very different than something that's on Adult Swim. So applying the MASH, mouth, attitude, size, and how scary. Let's take a look at this, and I'm going to throw this to Brad first and see what Brad says.
Oh, Lord. Okay, well, I don't even see nose, really. I mean, is there? Is that right there?
It's kind of,
Maybe,
it's sort of up to
maybe serpent-like, so that's where your creativity comes into play. So do you want to have it sound like there's only a maw and nothing else? It looks to be a fairly clear, large-jawed thing. So when it opens its mouth to make a noise, it can seize like this in that clenched kind of place where it looks like it's in this picture. But it can also go, you know, if you drop the jaw really. And all that was easy. Any of you guys can do that. You just kind of vocalize on the inhale. It's also the quick down and dirty way of doing dog, as long as you can shape your instrument the right way. But yeah, I would start with that. The attitude is looking down on something, so it's obviously the biggest, baddest sucker in the bunch, right? You know, so he's probably as big as me or larger.
And I think if we look at the picture, if we were to have more time with it, it's a
Yeah.
mountainscape.
Yes, absolutely. So
It's a big ass guy.
yeah, there's so much to go with here, but I think the mouth and the attitude, the size is obvious. He's huge. So you can interpret size by adding bulk to the sound of your voice, but you can also just do it as part of like a sub-point to the attitude, really. And then he's obviously like scary AF. So he almost looks like Ragnaros if he had been like extinguished. Sorry, Matt. I can say that because I'm a hoon. I'm Ragnaros' brother, so I poke him in the ribs all the time. Anyway, so this guy, I don't know. You want to hear something?
Yeah, just there's no wrong. And here's the other thing that when we work together, I always want to remind ourselves as actors. When you work professionally as an actor, you get sometimes you forget the fun, you forget the play because your livelihood requires you to book. So I will say this to everyone in this room who's going to come up and to ourselves as friends: there is no right choice. There's only different. So that's the rule of monster play that I love so much.
I'm glad you said that.
So make a different choice.
All right, let's see.
Come on, that was for free, ladies and gentlemen. Oh boy, well, yeah, we get an invoice and you lose your voice, so there you go.
Chris, you get the signatory?
Yeah, right? Okay, Chris, I'm giving you this one.
I like that.
So again, we're looking at this for the very first time, and let's mash. Look at the mouth, or the things around the mouth and the mask, the attitude, the size, and how scary.
Okay, looking at the mouth, nothing, I mean, more, I would say, it's more lizard-like whenever I'm looking at it, obviously like a rhino. And then as far as the attitude, I'm thinking very peaceful because this thing, it's got flowers growing on it. And that also tells me that this is very slow moving, like a Rolling Stone gathers no moss. So I would incorporate something very slow with it. It almost like if you're going around Jurassic Park, if you watch Jurassic Park and then you see the, is it the Brontosaurus? Yeah. And then, because also it's moderate size, but mainly the thing is with its size, that also kind of goes into what's going on in the body, as we touched on. It's got things growing on it. It's like a thing of life. And then, how scary? I don't imagine this guy being scary at all. I mean, I imagine him just kind of going through his life like,
Come on. So we'll take the question in just a second. I got you. I just wanted to bounce off that really quick. One of the things that makes great creature actors, is that you can without a picture, you can hear the scene. And so that's the one thing to remember is that even though you're making monster sounds and it looks stationary, it needs to have some life. So if they ask you for attack sounds or hunting sounds, that's not just a sound, that's a scene. And that's what both Brad and Chris just did, which was create a scene with the voice. And so just be thinking of ways to do that. You had a question?
Well, this creature to me, it looks like he even tires himself out, and all he can really do is yawn.
Yeah.
But we get a yawn, maybe like a really sleepy. That was so great. Yeah. No, that was excellent. Okay. I honestly don't remember what order I put these in, but I think I'm next. Oh, good. Yes.
Pathfinder.
Yeah, I see my favorite. So when we talk about size and we talk about the size of a creature, it doesn't necessarily mean the bigger they are, the scarier they are. Case in point with Chris. One of my favorite movies ever is Gremlins. If you guys haven't seen it, some amazing creature work. But the Gremlins, when they're not Mogwai and they get a little bigger and scalier, can raise a whole lot of hell. So just because a character's small doesn't necessarily mean that they're not scary. So how scary? Looks pretty scary. Sharp teeth, bow and arrow. He's just ruined a wedding cake, it appears, and he has, without a saddle, stolen this poor piglet. I don't know from where. And the veil of he's a mischievous little guy. So we got the attitude, mischievous, size, small, how scary.
The piglet's happy until he realizes he's going to be dinner.
Maybe that's why he's happy. Maybe he's happy because now he's not, Sweet release! Oh, a twofer, I like it. And then the mouth. So what do we notice with the mouth? The mouth has got these rows of sharp teeth, right? And there's a little nose, right? So immediately, something like this. And then, when they were doing Lord of the Rings, all of those orcs had these really great sort of culty accents. And interesting, most of the orcs in that movie were women. Yeah. Yeah, so I love that. So don't think that you have to be, a tough guy to do monster voices. Literally, there's room for tough women and everybody. Everyone's welcome in monster play. That's why I love it so much.
The clicker voice, which might be, I would say in the last 10 years, the most iconic new monster we've heard in Last of Us. That's Misty Lee came up with that.
Yeah, Misty created that using that vocal fry. So I'll give you this little gremlin here, and I'll pull the mic back because otherwise I'll be too loud. There you go. And that goes to show that you're only as good as your engineer, because if I were to do this creature work and any of us without an incredible technician who's literally like, right in that game. Yeah, because again, you're playing the spectrum of high, low, near, far, and they got to catch it all.
Yeah.
Like Pokemon. So who thinks that they want to try the Monster Mash out with this little fella? Speaking of Pokemans, he kind of looks like one. Would you want to try it? What's your name? What's your name? Okay, Rachel, I'm gonna come down to you and we'll walk you through it. Put your claws together for Rachel, everybody. Let's go. So, remember, most important, there are no wrong answers. Exactly what I said. There's no right, there's only difference. So have some fun here. And let's take a look at this fella. And what do we think this little critter's story is? Peaceful. Okay, so the attitude is peaceful, and what tells you that?
The flowers in the background, and just the general furry, fluffy.
It's pretty cute, right? Now, sometimes in sci-fi media and fantasy, this would be like, if you guys ever saw the Sony short, the Chub Chubs, did you guys ever see that? Have you seen that? Oh, I'll put it in it's one of my favorites, the Chub Chubs. It's a purposefully tricking the audience to thinking this thing is cute. So we would have to look at the script to make sure that the next page doesn't show that the row of teeth, the jaw unhinges and a row of teeth come out and it's horrible. But let's say that you're right and it's peaceful and adorable. Let's look at the mouth. What is the thing that you notice there?
Kind of a trunk-like thing?
Yeah, so it'd be kind of interesting to hear how we incorporate what choice you make with that. And then how big?
It's kind of difficult to it looks fairly small.
Fairly small, I think you're right, because if you look at the leaves, again, this could be like a dinosaur world where the plants are giant, but if we go off what we have, pretty small. And then let's talk about how scary.
Not really, no.
Not at all, okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to come up with, I'll give you an action, and I want you to just try to incorporate all the things that we talked about into that action. I'm gonna hold the mic here. So let's imagine this character is sniffing for food and finds a snack. Come on, that was great. That was excellent. That was really great. Okay, I love that. Let's build on that. So now we've got sniffing for food. So start the whole scene again. Sniffing for food, finds the food, but then thinks that there might be danger. Because a character like this is probably look how cute and defenseless it looks. Okay? So we hear danger. So I want to hear the arc of looking for food, maybe danger. Yeah, great. So great. So one thing we're going to build on them is then we're going to just finish the scene out. So we've created the beginning sound with the rooting around, discovering, and then once we realize there is a threat, let's hear this character sort of do a little bit of panting or running or scurrying away, whatever that sounds like. Real quick, when you're doing the breathing and exhale, anytime you're doing something that is running, and this goes for efforts or anything that you're doing, you want to make sure that you take a nice breath before and you don't do too many takes in the row because we have friends that have, and I have as well. You will pass out. You will if you're not careful because actors are sitting here to please. Like, oh, you want 6 takes? Great. Yeah, down you go. So, with that in mind, give me a little bit of what the scurrying sounds like. So, we're hunting, we're threatened, and then we're scurrying away. No, it's good, it's good. So just, and what I would do is when I have that much to do, I let myself, you don't have to get it right away, which is really nice. Because remember, there is no right, it's only different. So the more you give me a bed, like a bed of sound to start it off, you could start with cooing, you can build it. And then once you decide where the action starts, you can always go to the editor and say, so just build the scene a little. That was great. Yeah, that was great. Let's give it up for everybody. That was so great. So, for being our first volunteer, I just wanted to give you this Monster Squad prize pack. Yes, of course. And there's a business card in there, and with that you get a 30-minute free creature coaching with either Chris or myself. So we'll work that out. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Okay, we got time for one more. Who wants to come up? Anyone on this side? You want to come up? Yeah, I'd love that. Let's do it. Karen, everybody! Let's see what we got. Oh, nothing. What have I done? It's all right. What sort of show is this? That's all right, Karen. So we're going to give you, we're going to go back here to this one. And let's do, I want to bring the piggy to life. Can you help us bring this pig to life? So in the last scene, we did the goblin. But now we've got this pig. This pig, his noble steed. So let's look at, using the mash, let's look at the mouth first. What do we notice?
Well, it's a wide mouth. And it's probably in the middle of making sound right now.
Yeah, right. What do we notice about the way the eyes and the mouth are shaped, though? What's the attitude?
Oh, he's a happy pig. Yes.
That's excellent. Okay, and the size is probably a little big, right?
I don't think it's a very big pig. I would say this is probably like racing pig size, or maybe a little teeny bigger, but not much.
Great. I love it. So because we're clearly in a fantasy world, here's where you get to have some fun. Famous fairy tales like Alice in Wonderland have animals that talk intermittently. They still act like animals, but sometimes have language. So I'm going to give you the choice if you'd like to. You can incorporate some language, maybe simple language, along with the animal sounds to express the following. I think we need a squeal of glee, so if we could hear that. Great, that's great. That was excellent. Great. And then I think there's a wedding cake there, and once this goblin has dismounted, I think that pig's gonna start going through the cake. So can we hear the little snorts of the pig eating the cake? Great. Excellent. So I find it's always best to actually get into it a little bit. So let's put our bodies into the next steak. And we're gonna actually try, rooting around. And I wanna hear what it sounds like when the piggy snorts and gets a big glop of frosting. And that full Scooby-Doo, you know. Let's give it up for Karen, everybody. Great job. For being our second and final guest today, you get a little Frankie prize pack. Here you go. Thank you so much. Give it up for Karen and Melissa, everybody. So, I think we're going to open up to some questions depending on how much time we have. Yeah, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so if you guys have any questions about what we've discussed so far, we'd love to answer them or talk maybe some of the stories of some of the projects we've worked on. Yes?
General question, when we're doing the voices for animals, is it hard to stay away from the Foley?
Oh,
It seems like it would be natural because you want to go and be doing your own Foley.
oh, you're talking like
Or the,
yeah. It can be hard to not wrestle around and create additional noise.
headspace wise.
Yeah. What do I do?
Yeah, what do you guys do headspace wise? Keep out of it.
Interesting.
Don't wear loud clothing.
Yes.
It's like VO 201 type stuff where it, like, even my nerds vote t-shirt, go vote, go get registered.
Yeah, if you haven't registered.
Sorry, that was opportunistic.
No, do it.
You can hear.
Yeah.
Like anything that has, like, these guys have got, this is baked into Brock's shirt, so that's less of a noise worry if you accidentally brush or do something like that. Chris's is fine. I would never wear a shirt that had like an insignia on it that would cause noise. And then, I mean, the mics are great, let me tell you, but if you're not right on mic, then you don't hear it. You know, it's just, whatever you hear is what you hear. So the noise factor is not nearly as much of a problem as you might think, but it's always good to, you know, that prevention's better than a cure situation.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So when building up like a monster vocabulary, to start off, if you haven't been doing it like professionally in the industry for a while, would you just do kind of how you were with directions where you're just looking at different characters and then just trying to emulate what people do, or how would you recommend going about that process?
I feel like there's a monster in all of us. That's an anime Spider-Man. There's a hero in all of us. I feel like there is usually something in your voice, because obviously mine lends it to bigger creatures. So like that's like my bread and butter. So whatever your voice kind of naturally lends it to, and you'll kind of just think about like if you ever like are kind of messing around and like there's a voice that you put on for something. Kind of think of a creature like that, find some artwork, and then kind of work your way out from your strongest ones to like expanding your range.
One thing I tried once, and it worked because I booked it, and I really haven't done very much like that again, so maybe I should go back to doing the thing that worked. And that was, even if it is a non-humanoid sentient creature, but it's a creature, like chaotic evil type crap, maybe come up with a voice, an actual voice, and say words and lines and act as that character, and then the more you find the center of that character, then all of a sudden you know where your sounds are going to come from that are non-English, non-language type things.
Oh, no, I love that advice.
I think I should do more of that then.
No, I think exactly what Brad said. At the end of the day, it's still acting.
That's what people say, right?
Right. And the other thing is, if you wanted to get started, if today's panel, we're like, oh my gosh, we hope you feel empowered to try some stuff and play. And you know, we showed those clips at the beginning of Frank and Dee, because they're having a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun to get to do this work because the sky is the limit. But when building your toolbox up, I'd say the first place to start is just think of the most common monsters in media right now. What is the number one monster that we see on television in zombies? Zombies, I just gave it up. There we go. It was zombies. So zombies, zombies are a huge one, but think of two or three other monsters that we see a lot of. What's another kind of monster we see?
Politician.
I'll accept that.
I see what you did there.
Listen, I don't know your name, but I'll tell you something, I will build a wall.
She's gonna make your mouth look like an asshole.
Yeah, what's the mouth shape? A little butthole. So, but to even it out, we're gonna do Bernie Sanders, and I'll tell you why. So let's get back to this. Vampires, zombies, werewolves, golems are like the Frankenstein kind of big, like.
Classic cinema type monsters right now.
Yeah, if you start there.
Kind of a resurgence.
Brad mentioned skeletons. Think of what games are really popular and will continue to be popular. Warcraft, Skyrim, Elder Scrolls. What sort of creatures live in those worlds? Yeah, now dragons are interesting. Is anyone watching The Witcher? Okay, so for your homework, if you have a chance, watch an episode of The Witcher and listen to some of those sounds.
Toss a coin to your Netflix.
Toss a coin to your Netflix. I love it. It's a really, really fun show, but the creature work and the creature designs are my favorite. And that's a really great way to build your libraries by just watching stuff with monsters in it.
Exactly. The most exposure you can get, the better. I mean, just do it. I saw your hand come up, so.
Yes. A long time ago, I watched a little video game with Lunar Superstar Story.
Yeah.
And one of the voice actors on that game said he had to drink a lot of milk to build up phlegm and eating it as a sick.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest things you guys have to do to get those sounds?
That's the worst question ever.
Well, when I was working God of War, they got me for this Hellwalker, which is just this huge Nordic, they got me for Traveler. And then the morning of, they're like, oh, we also liked your Hellwalker audition. The Hellwalker was much more wraithy. So anyway, I did the Traveler one, which is that huge Nordic one, went through all the death noises. And I was like, and they're like, oh, and you're going to do Hellwalker too. And I was like, well, I can't really, my voice is gone. Like, oh, that's great, he's dead. So that you incorporate that into it. So it was like, awesome. So it was just like, all right, I felt like crap for 2 days after that session.
Asterisks, this is where we talk about the advocating for yourself thing. Apply it right here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It is okay to say it hurts.
You poor man.
It's okay to say. And the other thing is, I once had to do, I voiced the Kool-Aid Man for a while. It was a really fun gig, and oh yeah! I consider him kind of a monster, because if he showed up in real life, he'd be, oh shit! And so the Kool-Aid guy was super fun, but one time they brought me into a session and they go, okay, we need you to, oh yeah, but do a bird call. I'm like, and they had this whole thing where the Kool-Aid Man was calling owls, and so I had to take, I almost drowned myself, but I had to do, oh, and that made it to air. That was the thing they liked.
Waterboarding is alive and well. And what's worse, we do it to ourselves. I have done that exact thing, and someone was like, and what's worse, waterboarding yourself just like Brock was just about to do, while also trying to run and heave.
No fine.
So there it is. You were literally waterboarding yourself. And one finally, after about 3 or 4 minutes, they're like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Like, really?
So we'll bring it full circle. We talked about Frank Welker in the beginning. There was a show I used to love called The Snorks. If you guys know the Snorks. So it's not quite the Smurfs. The Snorks were these underwater Smurfy things.
Kmart Smurfs.
Kmart Smurfs. And they had these weird antennas. And most of the Snorks took place underwater. And so one of the voice actors told me this story, Michael Bell, who's incredible. If you don't know his work, you do know it, but if you don't know him, look him up. So Michael Bell worked on 2 seasons of the show, and he would drink water and talk, and then he looks over, and Frank Welker is doing this. And Michael's like, are you kidding me? For like 2 years we've been working on this, and you've been doing this and didn't think to tell me? And then basically Frank was like, it was too funny to tell you. It was like, 2 years! Oh, do we have one final question?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Damn, that's a good question.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Chris?
I honestly, now I'm wishing I had used the microphone. Cool. I usually just keep it up there. It just depends on if you're going close. Really mine is, you know, you get a whole lot more fullness when you're close up as opposed to. So I get, if you want that big bass character, go up close with it.
Yeah,
And
it's called
maybe-
proximity effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's right.
But yeah, these are dynamic microphones, so they're going to be a little different. You almost have to eat them in order, like especially if the gain's down, because like mine is. These guys, theirs is turned up a little
Which
bit
is why
more.
we're pulling it back, yeah.
You know, it's not that I have a weak voice. Yeah, it's probably because I have a weak voice. but honestly, I've gotten up really tight on a microphone in order to, you know, sometimes we have to half voice Soto style on not only creatures but also like big barrel chested guys that look like me except monstrous. Wait a minute, never mind. That applies. Yeah, so yeah, what Chris was talking about with the presence there is that
You get way up here and all of a sudden, it's like I'm barely whispering and it sounds like this.
of course, if it sounds like that in the control room to someone that's like, oh wow, you've got such big basso profundo voice, I'm like, no, I really don't. But thanks for the paycheck. But yeah, the microphone is just as much of a part of the instrument because the signal chain starts with your diaphragm. It goes out of you into a microphone through all sorts of wires and out or into a computer.
One final thing I will say before we wrap up. With the signal chain, when you're dealing with a microphone, the compressor in your audio editing, do not edit your creature voices. Those need to be raw. They need to know that you can deliver that. And we know people and have had friends who have booked jobs on creature voices that they have manipulated, and then on the day we're unable to now if they do it in post-production, it's different.
Yeah.
I've worked on some things with Disney where they've decided to manipulate it afterwards to add something sort of mechanical to it. Fair game. But in your audition, we need to hear the raw sound. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and a lot of times they'll actually, like in our casting notices, they'll say whether a creature or character's voice will be processed.
Yeah, they'll
That's
say
the
adding
case. Yeah.
we're adding processing later, so don't affect your voice in that way.
Yep.
Well, I think we've come to the end of it. Thank you all so much for coming out, and enjoy the rest of Anime LA. Just stick around for Laura Stahl. She'll be having her Q&A at 2:30. She's right there. Found her.
Thanks, everybody.
Right, thank you.